All right, y'all, let's break down salvation of the Jews and how John 3:16 is being used against you, because in John 16:23, Jesus tells us that we don't have to ask him for anything. So if Jesus says we don't have to ask him for anything, the pastor says you need to ask him into your heart. Paul says whatever. So who do we listen to? Do we listen to Jesus, or do we listen to these so-called men that have stolen the key? And Jesus says the keys to the kingdom of heaven are within you. And they're telling you heaven is out there, or you have to die to get to heaven, or whatever. So let's break down John 3 a little bit so you can understand these things. Because Jesus is answering the Pharisee Nicodemus, and he's saying, aren't thou a master of Israel? Israel is a man. Okay? So then he calls him out. He says, I've told you earthly things. You believe me not? How shall you believe if I tell you heavenly things? And this is where people will be like, Israel's not a man, when it tells you about the boy named, or the man named Israel, or whatever. Okay, so, or Israel's this nation, Israel's that nation, or Israel's this, Israel, why America is this, why the Christians don't stand, why the Christians do stand, blah, blah, blah. It's all these divisions of the light, of the lampstand, that we all have to go down, that we all have to gather. We all have to be able to put it together, have to be able to hold it in our hand, and view it all together in this dark world. And the way it's taught and brainwashing stuff, it keeps you in the darkness and under, where you can't breathe. And this is what Jesus was teaching when he was walking on the water. And the baptism of floating above the water is coming out of the brainwashing and living your life the way you need to live it. Not based on the opinions of other people. Not based on how this world tells you how to live it. All right? Jesus is teaching with the fasting and going out to the desert to detox the body, to clear the mind, to clear out all this frequencies and such, because we have to be in tune with ourselves. And this is why he's telling us in that day, in John 16:23, you shall not ask. We don't need to ask him for anything, because the Father is within us. And this is what John 3:16 is teaching. For God so loved the world that he, God is light, the sun, the projection. Okay? We are the lampstands. We are the sons of God. We are the SUNs, that light of God. There's a light in us. This light lives forever. It is born again and again and again. And he's calling out this religion where you have to worship this begotten Son, and that's how you get the everlasting life. Okay? It's being used against you. And this is how the gospel's been changed. What Jesus taught and what Paul teaches. Because Paul, the Pharisee who killed Christians, he saw what Jesus was teaching, the mind over matter and such. So he comes in and creates a spiritual bondage, a bondage of the mind. To control the mind is called government. Okay? The picture or plaque or whatever of Moses, his face or whatever, is in your capital. So this is where they're lifting up that serpent. The DC is part of that 600 of the 66. That Roman numeral, that Roman times, that revived Roman Empire that you live in. And Joseph is a figure of Jesus. He comes in to break up that Roman Empire, to divide that Roman Empire. And that's what Joe, the begotten, the 46, is doing. Okay, and that's how he's going to be hung on the cross. Crossroads over America with the eclipse. It's going to be the cross, and that's the G's us for that GE for the electric and those things. But I'm going to do some other videos on these things, tying in some other things, not to get on that rabbit trail. But Jesus is telling us, he's calling out this religion in John 3. All right, and after he says, even the Son of Man, or no man hath ascended up to heaven, but he that come down from heaven, even, talking about the Eve, the Son of Man, which is in heaven. Okay? And you understand the Eve and the woman, because the Adam, all right, the Adam in the beginning with the male, all right, there's, in Genesis 5, it talks about Adam and his so-called male lover, or it's the Adam and the male lover. But that would be the woman giving birth to the world, all right? So, and this, the Son of Man, which is in heaven, all right? So we're operating in heaven. And it says, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Okay? So this is where they're saying, oh, this is how you get to heaven, or this is how you need to live to be in heaven, or how people are creating this, that, and the other, or whatever, right? Jesus telling the Jew, if you think I'm God or whatever, then follow me, right? I'm not... We're all part of God. We're all the sons of God. So once you realize that the Father, that Son that gives life to this earth, gives life to this projection, operates within all of us, then we become that sons of God. And that's where we're the sons of man, and we're operating in heaven, where everything is good. Okay? So, and it's also about loving others. So if something is creating harm, or the person doesn't want to do it or whatever, then we need to do what's good for them as well. So this is where we get that positive and negative, that way we can positively and negatively plug in. But however, this world is, we need a grounding in this world in a sense. And since we're lifting up off the ground and going to a heaven, and learning how to operate in the 2 versus the 3 in a matter of speaking, then that's where it all comes in. All right. So either way, so we're operating in this heaven. The kingdom of heaven is within us. They have taken the keys, and this is where they're taking the begotten Son. They're taking the light from within you and telling you that this light is through this man. All right, so you're worshiping a man when you're worshiping Jesus, because you're saying that God came down through him. That's exactly what they say with Israel or Moses. God came down and spoke to him through the burning bush, which is the cannabis. All right, so all these things are symbolic. The church is teaching that a literal bush caught on fire and talked to Moses, when the Bible tells you it's an allegory. Okay, so we need to figure out the allegory for today's modern times. So he's calling out the religion where they're lifting up Moses, the serpent, because in Jesus' time, this is when the Old Testament time frame or whatever, the Old Testament was translated 300-ish years before Jesus walked in that Roman Empire, and that Greek and all that stuff comes together with the Roman Empire, and that Latin, the Latin for the begotten and all those things. Okay, so so we don't need to ask Jesus into our heart. All right. Just go back and read this, y'all. Forget what they've taught you. Go back and read it. Understand that there's God versus Lord God, earth versus Eden. There's free and earth, like the tribal nations, the Indians, where everything was good, and the culture and the nation or whatever. Everything the earth provided was good. And then there's the garden, where he's telling you that this is what you need to do to be good. You need to work the garden. You need to be naked. You need to have division between the man and the woman. The man needs to rule the woman. Okay, that's what we see in the church. Jesus is giving them freedom. Jesus said the woman is equal to the man, that we're all part of that one light. All right, so the church is Paul's teaching that a woman's not equal. That's what this old day is, where the man had to order for the woman in the restaurant because she was not allowed to speak at public. The only place she could speak was the grocery store and shit. All right. So if that's what y'all want to go back to, go down there to Texas and Florida and whatever else they got lined up for you. All right. John 3:16 is being used against you. The Father, for God so loved the world that he gave his, okay, that believeth in him. He's calling out this so-called religion where you have to ask this God into your heart to change you, and you have to obey the law. This is where you got to repent. Why? Not because it's work, because you love Jesus and all this blah, 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 blah. All right? That's all based down into work. And to do it in the mind is to do it in the body. So when you got to go ask Jesus into your heart, you might as well just go to your Father. Like, Jesus, will you come into my heart? That's work. When you have to go ask somebody for something, to get up off your ass, you have to walk and talk and go ask them for things. All right? So, this is go back and read for yourself. Jesus is saying in John 16:23, ask nothing, okay? And in that day ye shall ask me nothing. Verily, verily, I say unto you, whatsoever ye shall ask in the Father in my name, he will give it to you. All right? So this is a magical world. And Jesus teaches us to be quiet and to be meditative, which is so-called prayer. But the way they teach prayer is so-called the grievous sin. I got all these problems. Please pray for me. I did not live my life right. Please pray for me. My parents, they're upset with me. Please pray for me. I'm doing all these things wrong. My life, I don't have anything in my life. Please pray for me. God is against me. What a miserable way to live. You can't do that anymore. Salvation is of the Jews, Jesus said. Moses lifted the serpent, Jesus said. Moses brought the law out of the hardness of his own heart, Jesus said. The serpent is in the garden. The garden's there to keep you in bondage, without knowledge, without life. Those are in the middle. You cannot touch it. That knowledge and tree Eve wanted, or that life, that knowledge of good and bad, Eve wanted it. That's why the moon comes out during the day and the night. The sun is only during the day. So as the moon is the lesser light, it actually has more power because it can go from day to night. Has 2 in 1. So, and then it talks about in verse 26, at that day ye shall ask in my name, and say not unto you that I will pray the Father for you. All right, so no prayer. All right, because prayer is within. And it's meditation within. It's finding that single eye where the 2 eyes become one. We have this and this. 2 visions, they come together in the third eye, the pineal, where God is, where the third temple is built without hands. So we're going to end it here. We're getting into part 2 on this a little bit, on the veil over the face.